Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail, a show produced through Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I am your host, Dr. Mandy Simon. I am joined today by our very special guest who kicks off all of our speakers for this show. And she is a resilience expert, which is really timely. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Sandy Asch. Hi, Sandy. Welcome.
So excited to kick your wonderful show off and to talk about how we can nourish ourselves and infuse ourselves with strength that we need to get through this time and whatever's in front of us and just thrive.
Yeah. And I think at this time, it's helpful to tell, we have viewers and we have listeners. So I usually just say our audience at home, that Sandy and I first met during the initial lockdown. And now at the time that this show will be released, we'll be heading into the second lockdown for most places around the world. So this is really a timely and important aspect for us to find a way to support one another. And as you know, Sandy, one of the main reasons I invited you here today is because the goal of this show is to provide practical tools to move forward robustly in our post-pandemic world in ways that we can operationalize and we may not have thought would be useful to us or relevant to us before the pandemic.
Yes, and so much that we've learned, and I'll sort of kick off by saying this, all the tragedy, the difficulty and the challenges in our COVID world, and yet inside of that, so much good has come. I mean, we have been and are being urged and encouraged and invited to grow and stretch in ways we never would have imagined. And frankly, if the world had been calm and peaceful and things were just moving along as we had hoped, maybe we wouldn't have had these opportunities to really rise up and create connections like ours, right? We would never have connected. So when we look at COVID, on one hand, and I'll just say this pandemic world, this new world, there are definitely some dark clouds. But for the most part, this is a time for us to develop what I call mind over matter, to be able to look at where we are and not know necessarily what's coming next. Yeah. And yet inside of that, really focus on and leverage all of the gifts. And I know that you and I have spoken often about the gifts of COVID. And I think for all of us, no matter our circumstance or how we've been affected, we've all been affected. We've all experienced some form of trauma on a sort of scale. But inside of that, I think for all of us, it's almost forced us to develop an inner strength and to be able to up-level our mastery of our mind. We've been talking so much the last 6 months about physical quarantining and building physical immunity. But for me, it's almost the mental immunity that's even more important. Our ability to sort of quarantine our thoughts and filter out all of the noise, the rumors, the misinformation, the fear, the uncertainty, and just focus on what's necessary. Yeah. And that's, I think, really helps to support our physical immune system, but really keeps us focused and balanced and able to move forward in a positive and empowered way.
Yeah, and I can hear it in your voice, and I'm so appreciative of the enthusiasm that you have and the commitment that you have toward moving teams of people forward as well as individuals, because this is what you specialize in your own area of expertise. And what I keep saying is the one great certainty is that we're all in this together. And never in the history of any of this world or the worlds that we've read about in the history books before this has this been more true, and in a way that we've never, ever seen before. This is not 9/11. This is not a tsunami in some part of the world. This is not just an earthquake. This is not just a wildfire. And this, all of these things are going on. But in addition to all of these things that are going on, we're united on a global stage in a way that is crossing boundaries of things that have typically divided us.
Yeah, so much. Obviously, most of the work I do is with organizations. And as you know, I've been working, consulting with the city of Houston, in particular Houston Public Works, which is responsible for the infrastructure of Houston, which we believe in the next census will be the third largest city in the US.
In one of the largest states in the United States.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've been working with them to build resilience and create, to your point, the sense of unity and clarity of purpose. And through the pandemic and hurricanes and, the George Floyd outcry and demonstrations, there's been so much going on in Houston, and it was a hot spot again.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed about the employees at Houston Public Works is because they've built and develop these foundational muscles of these habits that build resilience over time, even though they've had to remain on the front lines, because most of them are essential workers, they've been able to rise above their circumstances and be creative and come together with loving kindness, I would say, and teams to figure out how to protect themselves, protect each other, and even protect their families. And there have just been some extraordinary stories that have emerged about how these people have, with incredible grace, have just gone above and beyond to encourage and support each other and keep each other healthy. And that's, I think, what you're talking about is one of the great, great gifts. And let us not lose sight of this, even when the world goes back to being a beautiful, easy place to live, is that our need to be united and aligned, our need to demonstrate loving kindness, our need to invest in ways we'd never imagined in our physical, emotional, and mental health have all been brought forward to us in ways really, and they would never happen. I can tell you this, I'm a huge proponent of staying healthy, right?
Yeah.
And I've had a pretty good protocol and routine for many years. But when COVID sort of blew in, I really stopped. And I asked myself, wow, maybe I need to kick up my investment in my physical and emotional health to the next level and not just sort of coast on what I thought was working. So even for those of us who have developed these muscles, and we all have, to know what it is that we need to do to be able to stand firm in any storm. And, like a strong tree, maybe shake a little but not break. We've all been encouraged and invited to ask ourselves, who do we need to be? How do we need to think? What are the habits that we need to master so that we can ride the top of the wave and not get dumped by it? You know what I mean? How often have you been swimming in the ocean, and instead of sort of surfing over the top of the wave, you thought you'd try and go through it or under it, and you got dumped, right?
Yeah.
And I think, the COVID has been such a powerful reminder for us about how quickly things can change and how uncertain things can be. I mean, in the matter of a week, literally the whole world came to a standstill. Yeah. And who knows what's coming next? But whatever is coming next, the more proactive we can be. And that's why I love the work that you're doing, because you're giving people tools and inspiration and loving encouragement to build the strength and the muscle that we need, that no matter what comes our way, we have the certainty inside of ourselves and the skills to be able to respond effectively.
I agree. And I think, the tagline for finding your holy grail is build resilience, live fearless. And this idea is that resilience isn't about toughing it out and not exposing your emotions and not asking for help. It's about understanding that by taking action, no matter how small, to create a level of control that makes it, from your own perspective, feel that you have control, is building resilience. And that this repetitive commitment to self and world to do this does actually lead you out of the dark into the light.
Absolutely. And isn't it true, Mandy, in the darkest times is where we experience the greatest growth.
It is.
And yes. One of the things I've been speaking to groups about the last couple of months, I know you and I had this conversation, and certainly as I speak to leaders in organizations, is I suggest, make your list of 30 COVID gifts. Now, people sort of laugh at me, but if you were to take out a piece of paper and a pen or do it digitally, you'd come up with 2, 3, 4, 5 gifts or things, ways in which you've learned, grown, become more connected, become clearer on what's really important. When it gets to 10, it gets a little sticky. 15, you have to start digging. But the actual exercise of not stopping until you've listed 30 gifts from COVID really forces you to look closely and carefully and to see how, in some cases, hopefully, all the goodness that has emerged may even at some point begin to outweigh some of the darkness that has come along with it. It reminds me of that metaphor of if you have a bucket of dirty water, the more clean water you put in the bucket, the more it sort of it replaces the dirty water, and eventually you have a bucket of clean water. And I think that's the imperative for us as we go now into the second phase and cold and flu season and the United States elections and the economy and what that's going to bring. There's just so much in front of us that we need to always be infusing our bucket with ideas and conversations and habits that are nourishing for our mind, our soul, and our body.
And let's be clear to our listeners at home right now, which is that really this is exactly why I have brought you here, is to talk about the fact that you're challenging the audiences at home to list the 30 gifts that COVID has given them. And the first time that we did this together, it was at the very first lockdown, within 40 days of the very first lockdown. And it's become so clear at this moment that we're entering the second wave of lockdown, and this is no longer how many months are we going to be in this. This is how many years are we going to be in this. And so really standing up and standing forward and saying, it's time to write down what are the 30 gifts that COVID has given you. And when you first told me about this, maybe you can take them back through this, but if you can go back through what it was like for you when you wrote down your 30 gifts that COVID gave you and what it felt like on the first 10, the second 10, and the third 10.
Yeah, I'll be honest, in the beginning, I really struggled, because there is a tendency for us in times of uncertainty to feel like we're at effect rather than at cause, CAUSE. And even, the smartest, most evolved of us have that human tendency to feel hopeless and helpless and get, I'm going to say, sucked up into that vortex of despair. It's just like a vacuum cleaner that everywhere we went, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there was just so much uncertainty and negativity and fear. And when I asked myself and demanded of myself to look at my gifts, it was a struggle. I got to 5 or 10 and then I said, oh, this is silly. I don't need to be doing this. But as time has passed And I keep on bringing myself back to this, I'm going to say it's a trim tab point for me of, am I going to get dumped by this wave, or am I going to ride this wave and use it as an opportunity to strengthen every part of me in my life? And oh, by the way, how can I use my talents and gifts at even a higher level to contribute more, to inspire more, to support more, to create more goodness and more transformation? And I know that you and I are completely aligned, because that's what you're doing. So in a time like this, and moving forward, there will be a tendency for us to be small, to play safe, to hold back, to make excuses, to sit and wait for someone to do something. You know, that feeling of, well, there's nothing I can do. I just have to wait and see and hope. And I think if we do that, we're going to get swallowed by the wave. So this is that time that we have to really train our minds, I'm going to say with rigor, about what to focus on and what to see. And that list of 30, by the way, I'm still working on the 30. I haven't quite gotten to 30. But I keep on going back to it, because I know that if I come from that perspective of focusing on the gifts and the opportunities, that this will be a time that will help me reach my next level of growth and have created something meaningful from this experience other than despair and sadness.
I think this is so important, and it's so integral. And the reason that this is the case is because it does help us move from survival mode into learning how to thrive again, which is what it is that we are each seeking as human beings in our lives each day, is to have some renewed hope, to live life joyfully, to find our way forward, and to have it feel meaningful. And this is for everyone at home. This is such an effective tool if you can just sit down and work on it. And as Sandy said, she hasn't finished her list, but it isn't an unstarted list either. And you know, we've heard so many incredible stories about the gifts that COVID has given. And the whole point of why we're here today is to focus on this part that makes the glass half full and not the glass half empty. So I am not going to talk about what makes the glass half empty today. I am going to recognize that these things exist and that we all feel them very deeply as human beings at this point in our history. But that I really want to keep us focused on this important part of putting one foot in front of the other and continuing to write down one gift at a time and making that difference for ourselves and then ultimately for others.
Yeah, perfect. And what a beautiful way to start the day or to end the day, you know, before we go to bed at night. You know, for so many years, we've learned from so many great teachers to focus on gratitude and think of things that we're grateful for, so that as we're sleeping, our subconscious mind can integrate that. And this is going to take real strength for us to go to bed at night in gratitude for the goodness, right? And the opportunity, and to wake up and have our first thought before our feet even hit the floor be of how in every day we can give 100% of ourselves. And, you know, and honestly, there's been a time during COVID where I haven't given 100% of myself, because I've given into that. I've been allowed myself to be, you know, swooped up into that vortex of negativity and despair. I call it the downward spiral, or, you know, whatever it was, it would be distracted, or certainly I've gained weight and that slowed me down. And I have this renewed sense of inspiration, and I hope that we can transmit this, and I know you will be doing this through your radio show. It's for us to wake up every morning with that unwavering, laser-like focus on giving 100% of ourselves every day, you know, and not 100% as in beating ourselves up and being exhausted and getting sick at the end of the day, but giving 100% of our gifts, our talents, our inspiration, and really contributing maybe at levels that we haven't before. And I think when we do that, that's when we get that lasting sense of fulfillment, and we go to bed at night with that feeling of, I'm doing good, and nothing is better than that.
You're right. You're right. And it's so important for all of us to understand this. And I'm really grateful for you to come and to share this with our audience today. And I'd love for you to share with them how they can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. My website is Sandy Asch, SandyAschch.com. Definitely find me on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And for people who haven't yet gotten a hold of it, I have this wonderful Resilience Daily Planner that I actually created for myself at the beginning of COVID to create that consistency of habit and to keep practicing those skills that I know are so important to be resilient. And you could people can download that at sandyasch.com/planner, PLANNER, and it's fillable and customizable. And I keep going back to it for reminders and inspiration of the things I know I need to do every day to stay focused, balanced, healthy, and positive.
And one of the features that we've actually added for this show is we've added the Finding Your Holy Grail companion workbook. So for the audience at home, please make sure that you fill in the theme page for Sandy, which is actually going to have a lion roaring on the Holy Grail, because this is the name of her book. So
if we have a minute, can I tell a quick lion story?
Yes, please.
So most people don't know that it's really the lioness who goes and makes the kill and feeds the pride.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And the males actually sleep most of the day, which is interesting. But one of the, as I grew up in South Africa, and we'd go on safari a couple of times a year. And of course, the highlight was always to watch the kill. And I was always fascinated by the lioness. So whether you're a male or a female listening, it doesn't really matter. The attributes are the same. But, the lion fails probably 70 to 80% of the time. So that means only in 20 to 30% of their tries, their efforts are successful in making a kill and bringing home food for the pride. But there is something so fascinating about that. The lioness doesn't feel sorry for herself. She doesn't blame herself. She doesn't blame the herd of buffalo or the windstorm. She just gets up again and again with that same confidence and tries over and over until she accomplishes her goal. And I think that's such a valuable lesson for all of us. Yes, there will be times when we feel broken or crushed or depressed or worried or anxious. But when you have a clear and compelling purpose that's bigger than yourself and outside of yourself, then that helps to pick you up, and it calls you forward every day without judgment, without a sense of, I failed, or I'm not good enough, or, will people listen to me, and, will I get what I need? There's just a tenacity and a perseverance and a sense of inner strength and courage that I always loved to see in the lion and the lioness. And so the whole idea of the roar just rings so true to me, because the roar is an expression of that courage, the strength, the determination to rise above circumstances and fulfill on your purpose.
And I love this because they're still at the top of the food chain and the king of the jungle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a really fantastic thing to understand this ratio of failing to succeeding, and yet it's about the perseverance. So it's truly wonderful. I'm so grateful to you for coming today and sharing once again your presence and your gift with us, and just challenging everyone to look at this from your beautiful perspective in which you approach life. It's really wonderful to have you here. So thank you very much for coming to be our first guest.
I'm grateful for the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'd like to thank all of our audience at home. and also Passionate World Talk Radio for providing a platform on their internet radio station for our show, Finding Your Holy Grail. For more information, you can go to passionateworldtalkradio.com and findingyourholygrail.com. Until next week, keep safe and stay brave.